Welcome to the debate. Right now, nearly 90% of the financial damage of employee burnout, it doesn't actually come from people calling in sick.
No, it comes from presenteeism.
Exactly. People sitting right at their desks, completely depleted, costing the global economy a staggering $8.8 trillion.
But here's the catch. If you work 55 hours a week instead of 40, your wage premium jumps by nearly 25%.
Right, so extreme overwork isn't a mistake. I mean, it's the exact calculated design of the modern corporate tournament. We are looking at a labor market that is fundamentally fracturing in real time.
Yet we're seeing two completely incompatible paradigms colliding right now. On one side, you have this culture of elite, high-achievement work, what economists call greedy work. And that heavily rewards extreme, uncompromising career sacrifice.
And on the other side, you have a radical autonomy movement, demanding strict boundaries, cognitive recovery, and, well, biological alignment. I will be defending the traditional tournament-style corporate structure today. For rapid capital accumulation and elite sorting, it remains a mathematically rational driver of economic success.
And I'll be taking the side of the autonomy movement. I come at it from a different way, arguing that this chronic systemic overwork is, well, it's structurally self-defeating. It's destroying the very human capital it relies on, and it is biologically and economically unsustainable for the modern workforce.
Okay, let's lay the groundwork for why the corporate tournament exists in the first place, because it isn't just arbitrary cruelty.
Some people might argue that it is.
Fair enough. But when we talk about elite professions, investment banking, corporate law, top-tier management consulting, we are talking about what Nobel laureate Claudia Goldin defines as greedy jobs.
Right. These are roles where temporal flexibility is exceptionally costly to the firm.
Precisely. If a client is facing a multi-billion-dollar hostile takeover, they don't want a rotating shift of capable lawyers passing notes to each other.
No, they want their specific lead partner available at 2 a.m. on a Sunday.
Exactly. And because of that demand, the market rationally pays a convex premium to employees who offer permanent, unpredictable availability.
We should probably clarify what that convex premium actually means in practice, because it's the carrot driving this whole system.
Good point. A convex premium means the financial reward doesn't just scale linearly with your time. If you work 20% more hours than your peer, your pay doesn't just go up 20%.
It jumps exponentially.
Right. It might skyrocket by 50% or 100% because you are offering something incredibly rare, total, frictionless availability to the firm. And this is backed by rank order tournament theory, pioneered by Edward Lazier.
The asymmetric information problem.
Exactly. In modern knowledge work, it's incredibly difficult to measure a junior employee's intrinsic ability or long-term judgment on day one. The employee knows how committed they are, but the firm doesn't.
So the firm needs a test, precisely.
Because direct output is hard to measure early on, firms set an inefficiently high hours threshold, like 60 to 80-hour weeks, as a screening mechanism.
Wow.
Yeah. The massive wage gap between a junior analyst and a senior partner isn't just compensation for current output. It is the prize.
A prize designed to incentivize maximum effort from everyone below them in the hierarchy.
Exactly. Long hours are a necessary, costly signal of future leadership potential. It's a high-stakes poker tournament, and the buy-in is your time.
Wait, hold on. You're talking about a high-stakes poker tournament, but in reality, you're paying full salaries to players who are too sleep-deprived to even see the cards in their hands.
That's a bit of an exaggeration.
No, but listen, you are describing a system that treats human beings as perfectly rational, frictionless economic assets. But human biology doesn't care about tournament theory.
The market does, though.
But the data is flashing red across the board. Right now, 55% of the U.S. workforce is currently experiencing burnout. And it's not just the older executives who've been playing the game for decades.
Right. The demographic shift.
Yes, Gen Z is hitting peak burnout at just 25 years old. That is a full 17 years earlier than the historical average for the American worker.
I see why you look at that and see a systemic failure, but let me give you a different perspective. A filter is supposed to cause friction.
Causing burnout at 25 isn't just friction, it's a structural collapse.
Well, in a rank order tournament, the firm is hyper-focused on identifying the next executive. The American Journal of Preventive Medicine data shows that replacing a single executive costs upwards of $20,000 in direct friction.
Okay, but
Let me just finish this thought. The high-pressure environment, the 80-hour weeks, the weekend fire drills, it's designed to purposefully filter out those who can't handle the stakes before the firm invests millions in elevating them to a partnership level.
look at the AJPM data again, though. It is staggering. You are hyper-focusing on the replacement cost of one executive while completely ignoring the bleeding of the entire organization.
Bleeding in what sense?
That same data shows that a mid-sized 1,000-person company is bleeding over $5 million a year to burnout. And here's the paradox we opened with. Almost 90% of that cost isn't from empty desks, it's from presenteeism.
Meaning they're at their desks, but their output is severely compromised?
Much worse than compromised. Think of cognitive capacity like a smartphone battery. The tournament model assumes you can keep the screen on maximum brightness 24/7 as long as you keep it plugged into a high salary.
Which for many works.
But biological burnout means the battery's maximum capacity has permanently degraded to 40%. It doesn't matter how much money you feed it, the hardware is physically compromised.
So you're arguing the stress literally changes their output capacity.
Literally. When a worker is flooded with cortisol from chronic stress, their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex decision-making and strategic risk assessment, it literally downregulates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They are sitting in the Zoom meetings, they're answering emails at midnight, but they are making strategic errors. Their overall output is reduced by up to 18%.
And their disengagement spreads.
Ion.
People throw around quiet quitting as the buzzword for this disengagement, but what the data shows we're actually seeing now is much more destructive. It's quiet cracking.
Where that boundary setting turns into a total inability to perform?
Right. But my counter to that is simple. The tournament never promised comfort. It promised extreme rewards for extreme endurance. If someone is cracking, they have simply revealed they aren't suited for the top of the pyramid.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that.
Why not?
Because you are conflating endurance with excellence. Quiet quitting is currently costing companies $438 billion in lost productivity, and that has evolved into revenge quitting.
Leaving a job specifically out of resentment?
Yes, broken trust, often with dramatic operational sabotage or sudden abandonment. We're seeing nearly half of Gen Z workers admitting to actively coasting. This isn't laziness, it is a highly rational, defensive, risk management response to a broken psychological contract.
What do you mean by a broken psychological contract?
Well, the old deal was, you give the corporation your undivided loyalty, your evenings, your health, and the corporation gives you lifetime security and a pension.
A model from the 1950s?
Right, and that deal is dead. These younger workers watched the generation before them sacrifice their marriages and their physical health for corporate loyalty, only to be met with mass layoffs via automated emails when the macro environment slightly shifted.
So they adjust their effort accordingly.
Exactly. When workers realize that corporate loyalty is a structural illusion, they logically treat the corporation as a highly substitutable client. They withhold discretionary effort because tying your entire self-worth to a corporate hierarchy, what we call career enmeshment, leaves you incredibly fragile. If you lose the job, you lose your identity.
I hear you, but I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because the financial data paints a very stark picture of what they are choosing to give up.
But the money isn't everything.
Let's look at the numbers. You say they're rationally opting out and defensively coasting. But look at the wage growth data for those who stay in the game and absorb the friction.
Okay?
Working just an extra 5 hours above a 47-hour week practically guarantees a 1% annual wage growth advantage over your peers. And if you jump from 40 hours to 55 hours, your salaried wage premium leaps by 25%. The market is entirely transparent about this exchange.
Sure, but at what physical cost?
At the cost of time, certainly, but refusing to play the game, choosing to strictly enforce a 40-hour boundary to protect your cognitive battery, it means formally forfeiting that massive financial premium. It is just a mathematical reality.
I think you're dismissing the health impacts too quickly.
I'm just looking at the structural divergence of the economy. It heavily rewards those willing to sacrifice their biological equilibrium. If a young professional chooses the autonomy model, they might preserve their circadian rhythms, but they are accepting a permanently lower trajectory for wealth accumulation and organizational influence.
I would argue that wealth accumulation is entirely irrelevant if you are spending it on cardiovascular treatments and divorce lawyers because you haven't been present in your own life for a decade.
That's a bit extreme, isn't it?
Not according to the data. Chronic stress contributes to 120,000 deaths a year in the U.S. Burned-out clinicians, to use a high-stakes example, have over double the odds of major medical errors.
That is definitely a critical issue in healthcare, yes.
But let's move past the diagnosis and look at the structural solutions being deployed, because the autonomy movement isn't just about people coasting in defeat. It is about fundamentally redesigning how work interfaces with human biology.
You're talking about the global shift toward compressed schedules like the 4-day workweek trials.
Yes, specifically the 100-80-100 model.
Remind me of the breakdown for that.
This is the framework where employees receive 100% of their standard pay for 80% of their traditional time in exchange for maintaining 100% of their output.
Right.
The UK ran the largest global trial of this with 61 organizations. The results absolutely shatter the fundamental assumption of your tournament theory, this idea that maximum hours inevitably equal maximum output.
What did the trial show?
During the trial, they saw a 65% drop in sick days, a 57% fall in staff turnover. And here is the kicker for the corporate balance sheet. Revenues actually increased by 1.4%.
Okay, wait. If we are dropping time by 20%, but output remains at 100%, and revenue actually grows, we have to unpack the mechanics of how that is physically possible. How are they achieving that?
Through Parkinson's law.
Which states that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion.
Exactly. When you compress the timeline and remove Friday from the equation, you force ruthless prioritization. Organizations suddenly realize that the 2-hour synchronous status meeting could have been a 3-line asynchronous email.
They cut the fat.
Yes, they ditched performative face time and stopped measuring hours as a proxy for dedication. Instead, they started measuring actual deliverables. But the autonomy movement goes even further than compressing the week. We are seeing the rise of chrono-working,
which is the practice of aligning work schedules with an employee's biological clock, rather than a centralized corporate schedule.
Precisely. Circadian rhythms dictate our peaks and valleys of energy, and they vary wildly across the population. Instead of forcing everyone into a rigid 9-to-5, or worse, a 9-to-9, you align the cognitive demands of the job with the individual's natural biology.
So giving people control over when they work based on their energy levels.
Right. Morning larks, whose cortisol naturally peaks early, they tackle their deep analytical work at 7 a.m. Night owls, whose core body temperature and alertness peak later, hit their stride at 4 p.m.
That makes intuitive sense.
By capturing that biological premium, you drastically improve cognitive function. You reduce the cortisol flooding that causes presenteeism, and you chip away at that $5 million burnout bill. It's biological arbitrage. You are getting a vastly superior quality of work by simply choosing not to fight the human body.
Listen, I completely acknowledge the elegance of that biological arbitrage. But let's apply this to the real world, because this is where the chrono-working and the 180-100 models hit a reinforced concrete wall.
I disagree, but go on.
Those concepts work beautifully in asynchronous modular environments. Software development, graphic design, internal HR, data analysis. But you cannot have chrono-working in a zero-sum, high-stakes, client-facing environment.
Why not? If the team is properly staffed and cross-trained, there's always coverage. You just hand off the work.
Because of the greedy job dynamic we discussed at the very beginning. In high-end law, investment banking, or crisis PR, worker substitutability is exceptionally low.
You're saying the client demands a specific person.
Exactly. The client isn't buying the firm. The client is buying the specific genius and context of the lead partner. If I am a CEO facing a federal indictment or a board navigating a hostile takeover, I do not want to talk to the junior associate who happens to be a night owl because my lead partner is preserving her circadian rhythm. I want my lead partner on the phone immediately.
So you're saying the client's panic dictates the structural health of the entire firm?
I'm saying the client's money dictates it. Furthermore, these are hyper-competitive zero-sum markets. If law firm A adopts the 180-100 model and closes its doors on Friday to preserve its cognitive battery, Law firm B, which demands 80 hours a week from its partners, they'll gladly stay open.
And what? Scoop up the client?
Yes, law firm B will take the Friday afternoon meeting, they will outwork firm A over the weekend, and they will win the multi-million-dollar retainer.
But law firm B is going to bleed talent, their turnover, replacement costs, those $20,000 friction hits you mentioned earlier. They will compound and eat their margins alive. They won't be able to sustain the workforce required to do the work they just won.
Not if they pay the Convex Premium. That is the equilibrium paradox of the tournament model.
By just throwing more money at the burnout?
Yes. Law firm B pulls all the massive fees they win from being obsessively available, and they use that capital to pay 25 to 50% higher wages to the specific people willing to work the 80 hours.
Wow.
And the harsh reality of human ambition is that there will always be highly driven individuals willing to take that trade. You cannot seamlessly compromise these models. If you unilaterally cap the hours to prevent burnout, you destroy the convex incentive structure that drives elite competition and massive wealth generation. The structural divergence makes compromise impossible.
I actually agree with you that a seamless compromise is impossible, but for a completely different reason.
Okay, let's hear it.
The structural incompatibility is exactly why the labor market is permanently bifurcating. The corporate tournament model assumes an infinite supply of young, ambitious talent willing to be fed into the machine for the increasingly slim chance of eventually making partner.
Which has historically been true.
But the demographic shifts and the psychological data show that the supply of willing participants is rapidly drying up.
Which brings us back to the 47% who are coasting and opting out.
Right. The autonomy movement isn't trying to win the corporate tournament. They are refusing to play it entirely. They are utilizing job stacking, overemployment, and strict boundary setting to neutralize the firm's leverage over their lives.
It's a defensive posture.
Exactly. You argue that the tournament is mathematically rational for the firm because it filters for elite talent and accumulates capital. I am arguing that protecting your prefrontal cortex, your sleep cycles, and your family life is mathematically rational for the human being.
And this is where the friction fundamentally rests. We are looking at the two highly logical, internally consistent, yet diametrically opposed philosophies of labor.
They really are polar opposites.
Right. For rapid capital accumulation, elite professional success, in organizational dominance in zero-sum markets, the greedy job model, and the extreme career sacrifice it demands, it remains a mathematical necessity. You simply cannot generate convex returns on a perfectly balanced, biologically optimized schedule.
And yet, for the vast majority of the global workforce, participating in that tournament is a losing bet. The massive financial premium you keep referencing is statistically out of reach for most, but the cardiovascular risk, the existential identity crises, and the staggering $8.8 trillion cost of presenteeism are guaranteed.
So they choose a different path.
Yes. For those workers, prioritizing cognitive recovery and structured autonomy isn't a lack of ambition or a failure to compete. It is the only rational way to survive the physical and psychological toll of modern labor.
So we aren't heading toward a neat hybrid compromise where everyone gets to be a highly paid executive who leaves at 3:00 p.m. on a Friday. We are witnessing a permanent bifurcation, an elite, high-burnout, highly compensated greedy tier, operating entirely separately from a flexible, boundaries-focused autonomy tier.
The choice ultimately comes down to which risk you are willing to bear. Do you risk your biological preservation and your personal identity for the chance to win the tournament? Or do you risk your vertical career trajectory and peak wealth accumulation to reclaim your time?
It's a profound structural choice, and it's going to define the next century of the global economy. There is much more to explore in the economic frameworks and psychological data driving this split. We invite our audience to review the literature, consider the stakes, and debate your choice in the comments. Will you take your seat at the high-stakes poker table, or will you cash in your chips before the house takes your health?
We leave that definitive choice to you.